Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by Nick Sutherland from Myndfit. And we have Nick, our first return guest today.
We do.
It's the first return guest.
Return from the abyss.
He has hero's journey. We have Shane Kelton from Power, Strength and Vulnerability. Shane, how are you, mate?
Good, thanks. I'm also now from Myndfit as well.
So. I know. Let's fill everyone in. Last time you came on the show and you were telling everyone about your story with what you had been through and all that kind of jazz, and that was actually the introduction. I feel like a matchmaker. I feel like Cupid. But you and Nick, first time you met each other on that last show. So tell us a bit what's happening now, because now you're working for old Nico.
A lot. Well, it's happened, as Nick would say, it's happened pretty organically. We caught up for coffee.
Oh, that does sound like Nick.
Caught up for coffee and chatted, and then I had the discovery session to learn what he was about, and we sort of just went from there.
Oh, beautiful!
So it's like a true love story.
It does, doesn't it? It all starts with that coffee down in Mornington. He gets you.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there was a connection on that podcast, and we caught up just because I thought he'd be a good bloke, and he was, and then he wanted to learn more about what Myndfit was doing, so I had the discovery session, and then it really resonated with him, and so he jumped into a 12-week program, and then he's switched into a 12-month program. Because he was doing really well and getting a lot out of it, and so we're sort of compartmentalised. He's coming in for an hour a week as a client, but he's also spending a couple of days a week here. Yeah, just I'm mentoring him. He's sitting in on some sessions. He's learning. He's doing the working in the business, but working on the business, more on the business at the moment. He's got to go and do some more study, but very, very exciting and very interesting for the both of us. I think we're going to talk about change today, and I was chatting with my girlfriend Emma the other day, and I said to her, I think I know how you feel about in our relationship. It took her a while to surrender to the fact that we were together, because she's a single mum, had to do it all on her own, be on her own, raise these two kids, be the provider, all that sort of stuff. And obviously I've had my business for 13 years, and it's always just been me. So having someone else come in, it's changed the dynamic, and it's a different energy, and it's not just me on my own time anymore. So I just came into that understanding the other day, and I think for Shane it's been a lot of change as well, which we sort of try and discuss in a proactive way, don't we, mate?
Yeah, we do. We talk most days about, I guess, the adjustments we're both making, and the understandings we're both coming to about those changes. We're both very uncomfortable at times, and we sit down and communicate them in a healthy manner. So we resolve any issues or anything that sort of comes to light pretty quickly. And I'm learning, I actually probably yesterday just needed to sleep because the amount of information I'm learning, and I'm loving learning, but I'm really fortunate to be in a position where not just I've learnt a lot of you, Ryan, but now learning a lot of Nick as well. And I'm so grateful for being in this position, really.
Yeah, and I mean, you've put yourself in that position, mate. And it sounds like it's all happened pretty organically, Nick.
Yeah, it's been a really organic process. It's been very flow, not force. That's
not really an idiom to use, because that makes sense, doesn't it? So if it happens organically, it's like nature's taking its course. You're not trying to force it to grow with keep the bugs away with pesticides, or pump hormones into the food. It's organically happening as nature would intend.
Exactly. It's just letting go and allowing it to pop up. But, there is more than one way to skin a cat. So, we could have gone into forcing it and demanding it happen and make it really rigid and structured, but we haven't. We've left it organic, and for me personally and in business, that works for me, and it's been the most effective way. I know other companies or organisations have lots of systems and structures in place and blah blah blah, and that works for them. So there is more than one way to skin a cat.
There is. Before we get to that idiom, beautifully segued again, Nick. Fantastic. Yeah, we were kind of the same at the centre. We there was no, rigid system or structure around interview processes and that kind of thing. Like we just used feel a lot at the end of the day. We're like, and all the staff and everything that we had, no one ever left, which is great. It's a great use, and they were a fantastic fit, and it was like
there was chain them to a desk, they're not allowed to leave.
That's detail. That's just detail.
Important.
Can I go now? No, heal someone else, for God's sake.
We haven't created utopia. Keep healing.
Yeah, keep healing, for God's sake. And yeah, we like all of a sudden it's like we need a new staff member, and it's like, oh, that person came in 6 months ago, and I like their vibe, so I bring them in to meet Melissa because she hadn't met them, and then she'd be like, yep, she sounds great, and bang, it happened. It wasn't this, and I think big companies, you have to and everything, and there's a lot of system and structures in place, but I think feel worked for us. Let things happen organically.
Especially in our modalities, and I've tried in the past. I've had a couple of people pop up, and we've tried them and brought them on board a little bit, and then it's organically dropped off. Yep. And whether that was because they weren't the right person, or I wasn't ready, or whatever, we didn't really dive too deeply. And it was Shano. That it was a really good fit and clicked. And I think we've got very defined roles without it being too structured. Like he's coming in as a trainee, and I'm mentoring him, so there is that role in place there. Yep.
So Shano, more than one way to skin a cat. Where does that come from? Who was the first person to say that? What's popping up in your?
Where were they? What period of time
in that beautiful mind of yours? What's popping up?
I was hoping you weren't going to throw this to me, but I'm going to say 1850s.
You said that pretty confidently. All right, I'm with you.
That's a good sign.
Well, it just came to me, so I'll go with the gut.
Channel it.
And I just feel like the wife the husband was skinning the cat, and the tool that he was using, wasn't getting the job done, and the wife yelled out, because he was frustrated and he was angry, and she just wanted him. What was his name?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not good with names of 1850s.
Neither's Ryan.
I'm fucking terrible at them. And where did you say where? Like what part of the world?
Bolivia.
Bolivia. Boris from Bolivia. All right.
And yeah, I guess the wife just yelled out. She was sick of him, sick of the anger, and just yelled out, "There's more than one way to skin a cat." And that was
Boris. There's more than one way to skin the cat.
But what would be I've never skinned a cat, but look, I can't imagine there'd be too many ways. You just
I
rip
reckon
the skin off it.
If I can jump in, I think Boris was trying to impress. Boris was a vegetarian, and he was out on a date, and he's seen Helga in the village somewhere, and he's the eyes have locked across the room in the local tavern. And he's asked her out on a date, worked up the courage, and she's going, yes. And he's like, oh, what can I cook you for dinner? I want to impress you with my culinary skills. And she's going, you know what? I've got a hankering for cat that I've got an itch. I've just got a scratch. And he's going, oh, fuck, all right. Yep, no worries. So he's gone out and he's found this cat in an alleyway, and he's taken it home. And he's like, what do I do with this thing? And there's no Google back then, obviously. It's the 1850s. And he's like, I've got to figure this out. And he's looked around, what tools have I got? And because he's a stonemason, so he's only got a chisel and a hammer. And so he's like, fuck. Right, so he's wrung its neck and he's killed it. And Helga's turned up early because she's dead keen. She's seen his big muscles.
She's, as you said, got a hankering for cat, which is one of the best lines I've ever heard.
Yeah. And so she's rolled up and he's knocked on the door and he's going, oh, fuck, I'm just about to skin this cat. She goes, that's okay, I'm ready to watch. I'm going. And so he's pulled out his hammer.
It's getting sexual now.
Well, she's a very virile woman, is Helga. And so he started trying to chip into the skin with his hammer and chisel, and she's looked at him. She's going, "What the fuck, Boris? What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm skinning the cat, and I'm going to prepare this amazing meal." And she's like, no, don't. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and that is not one of the ways. And so she's pulled out this blade out of her boot that she always carries on her because it's a dangerous village. And she throws it at him and it lands on the table.
In between his legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then he can't bring himself to do it, so she does it, and they live happily ever after.
You know what I reckon? I reckon that when she was watching him really struggle with the hammer and chisel, and she started, bringing it up, his ego got so hurt, and he really channeled all of his talents and skills with that hammer and chisel, and he got into some sort of flow monk state, and then he actually got the skin off in one perfect piece with his hammer and chisel, and it's like he came out of a trance, and he was holding the skin, and Helga was sitting there just so impressed and taken aback, and then she's like, what just happened? And he's like, there's more than one way to skin a cat, my dear Helga. And then they made wild love after eating cat.
Literal chills. Literal chills then. And then next date, she turned up, he was wearing the cat on his head.
Because he was bald. It was like a toupee, but it still had the head attached. So it was like this little head on the top.
And it was an alley cat, so it was missing patches of hair everywhere.
Yeah, and then everyone in the village were having a tough time integrating that because he was vegetarian. Like one day, Boris was vegetarian, the next he's wearing a dead cat's skin on his head. Like it's a big change from Boris. That's what women will do. Women will make us do crazy shit. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Women will change us.
Yeah.
The things you do for love or lust.
Oh, mate.
Totally.
Yeah, I've never done anything silly, but you two would have, I imagine.
No. So today's topic, I guess, is change.
Change.
And we talk about in here, and Shano's bumped into this knowledge that the law of nature is that everything is impermanent. So everything's constantly in change. I think Hasu mentioned it in a podcast once that our entire body changes every 7 years or something.
Yep. We're losing tens of thousands of cells and new ones are being created every day. But yeah, every 7 years, every single cell in the body will be different. So it's like we're like literally a different human in 7 years on a cellular level.
Well, and there's that expression, a man cannot stand in the same river twice, which is one that you love, I think.
Yep.
And it's because he stands in it, he steps out, he goes to stand back in it. The water has passed by, so it's different water, but his molecular structure has changed as well.
Plus he has had different experiences. So it's like whether he's come back a day later or 10 years later, he is a different person because we're changed by every experience that we've had. That's who was the teacher?
Well, I said to a client this morning, the version of you that woke up this morning is different than the version of you that went to bed last night. So that's why we need to create this separation, and people get stuck in this narrative of this happened to me 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. This is what happened to me, and it's not. It's what that version of you experienced. The version of you today did not experience that. And if you can get your head around that mind fuck, that puts you in a very good position.
Yeah, it's just when we so identify with our body and our physical form that just to know, like in 7 years, every single part of me right now will be dead. But I'll have all these. I'll be new cells, and I'll look similar. But every single cell in my body right now will be dead. And it's like, well, that is a bit of a mind fuck. But yet we keep going on, and we keep having, we stay alive from our memories. Like that's why we said like going to bed last night and waking up. Waking up's really funny. It's really weird. It's like we kind of have to remember who we are. It's like we wake up and I'm like, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, fuck, okay, this is my bed. What's on the walls? Okay, books. Okay, I'm Ryan. Because like I had the weirdest dreams last night. Like I was back at primary school, but I wasn't me, and like my brother was there, and we were trying to put bets on the horses, and there was a TAB there. Like all this weird shit, Then when you wake up and you have to sort of realize, okay, that was a dream. I'm Ryan. I'm here. Okay, I better get up and go look after my son. Like it's weird.
I've got a kid. Oh yeah, I've got these things to do. I've got these responsibilities. So what would change, Shano, for you in coming into Myndfit? And change for me, I guess. I've gone from a single office to taking over the lease of this building now. We've grown and expanded on the footprint of the business, and also we've got the online membership up and running. So the business is growing, and Shane's on board. So there's all this change at the moment, and which is interesting because everyone's in lockdown with Corona in Victoria. So everyone's going, I can't do anything, and Shane and I are just sort of going, what? We're sort of going the opposite direction. But he's been coming. I think his first day that he turned up to meet me, he stepped out of the car with thongs on in the middle of the winter, and a pair of scungy old shorts, and his hair was all over the shop, and he hadn't shaved in about 9 months. Looked like Tom Hanks that had just been dragged off that island.
Wilson!
Yeah, speaking with Wilson. And he's rocked up with his fiancée Alicia, and to have a meeting with me and my partner Em. And I said to him after we left, I said, so what do you think? She goes, as soon as I saw him in thongs, I went, yep, he's the one. He's going to be a good fit. So I've had to try and, it's funny for me, I've had to try and mentoring in terms of being a practitioner in psychotherapy, but I'm also, it's like having to train a new house cat. It's like, no, don't shit in the corner over there. Can you clean up your mess here? Can you do this? So we're lots of different values are bumping into each other.
You haven't actually been shitting in the corner, have you, Shane?
Oh, he hasn't found them yet.
Keep sticking them in the freezer so they don't stink.
Yeah, he doesn't. He cleans most of the areas, but not the ones where the shit is.
So what's it been like for you to come in here and to, you know, because it's not about you anymore, and the business isn't about me. It's about putting on a professional face for the people, I suppose. So you've had to, you know, he started wearing shirts in the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's been extremely uncomfortable. It's probably the quickest way to sum it up. I guess as I spoke last podcast, it was, I was at a place where I was just so, I guess I was a comfort slob would be the perfect way to describe it. And
been there, done that.
Yeah, every day was the same. And being a personal trainer prior to that as well, I was always pretty comfortable with what I was wearing. So adjusting to not only the clothing situation, but just being nice and presentable, and the language I'm using is incredibly different. I know a lot of my emails early on, Nick had to sort of change them completely. So I'm slowly starting to adjust to that, but I'm also now seeing it when I get emails in return or emails from other businesses or whatever I'm doing. I can see that their writing is like Nick's, where my writing was completely probably like a 14-year-old in high school, basically. Hey, mate, how you going? What's happening? All that kind of stuff. So the change...
There was very little grammar and punctuation or anything like that. It was just,
there was lots of commas.
Oh, you're a fan of the comma. Commas are good.
Yeah.
In places, commas didn't need to be, though.
Oh, you know.
No. Yeah, I think commas just like to be everywhere, to be honest. But yeah, so the change has been really uncomfortable, and I got to a point probably 3 weeks ago where I started to fall back into my old habits, and my mind and my body were sort of going, you're getting too, I guess, how do I explain this? But you get to a point where you're changing everything and your body goes, nah, we don't actually want to do this. Like, let's go back to being comfortable. And it was doing that, and it was playing tricks on me. And but I was so aware
when you say your body, like what kind of, was it actual physical sensations in the body, as in fear, resistance, physical pain in the body? Like what was the feedback?
Yeah, all of that. It was physical pain, really fatigued, and then the mindset was like, just don't go into work today. And then I was starting to think those thoughts of,
these limiting beliefs popped up, didn't they? All these reasons
every one I'd worked on just straight at me. But I just, as I've learned, I just sat back and I observed them, and I laughed at them, and I went, I thought back to last year when I did bricklaying for about 6 weeks, and one day I woke up and I just quit. And I had that moment 3 weeks ago with here, but I knew what was happening, and I just laughed and I went, just get yourself out of bed and get there, and then just see what happens. And 3 weeks later, I haven't really had that moment again.
So he pushed through that mental block, that limitation, and got out of your comfort zone. It's been interesting as well from my perspective, because I've just been observing him and not trying to push him too much, but I've been monitoring how he faces these challenges, these internal challenges, and it's been really refreshing, I think, and a sign of his potential and capacity, that he acknowledges them and comes and speaks to me about them and says he's coming to these conclusions before I have to tell him, which has been fun to step back and watch. I'll be like, oh, this is what I'd love him to do this, and then give him a day or two, and then he'd go, oh, and then I thought this, but then I did this, and I'm like, yes, you did it, good job.
It's like when I go and tell him, he kind of has this like smile and laugh. I'm like, you already knew that, didn't you? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, I was waiting for you. And I was just like, far out, it's like you're in my head. But I look back and I say he went through this himself, and he sees it every day. So, and it's that old saying, and it's really refreshing, because then when I see someone going through it themselves, I don't go and tell them. I wait for them to come into that understanding themselves. Whereas in the past, I would have tried to help someone and try and force them through that, rather than let them come to that understanding and have that space open when they're ready. So.
Yeah. No, I think it's so important for when you get the lesson yourself. It's like people, I had this, it was like one of the first sessions I did with Melissa, and I must have got all this advice, but it was like advice from myself. And I looked at her and I'm like I'm like, you're not like my therapist, but you're like a bridge helping me access this deeper knowledge that's already inside me. So it's like, I think that's why a good therapist will just be the bridge. So you can give yourself this good advice instead of being told. Because it's like when we get told something, we're like, oh yeah, okay, and we might take it on a little bit. But when we have a self-realization to ourselves, that's just so much more powerful, and we'll take that on board.
I just say we're creating a climate of change in here, and then we're just facilitating that change. So that's how I basically sum it up. And I had a client the other day. It's funny. Clients will go home and they'll start seeing their own suffering, and then they'll start seeing their suffering in their partners that they're creating within themselves, and then they want them to change. And we talk to them quite often about how if you do something and it feels great, if you go skydiving or you see a movie or go to a concert and you love it and you have a deep emotional experience of it, you want other people to do that. So you go and say to people, you have to go and do this. You got to go and see Nick at Myndfit. You got to go and see Ryan at the Centre for Healing. You got to go and see this band. You got to try this. And we try and impose and enforce our beliefs onto people, because it's what we want, and we get very demanding. So I said to them, I watched this documentary the other day called My Octopus Teacher on Netflix, and it was beautiful. And I said, in the past, I would have tried telling everyone, you have to go and watch this. But I learned that it's using blunt force trauma. You have to do this. Mm-hmm. So I found what I consider to be a more elegant way, which is to just try and influence those people and plant a seed. If it finds fertile ground, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. So I've just started talking and sharing what my experience was like. So I saw this documentary, and it made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me do everything in between. I was so absorbed. I literally said to Emma, my mouth is agape. I used the word agape.
It was like,
yes, it was. We were meant to watch 15 minutes of it, and we ended up watching the whole thing. We couldn't leave it.
I'm sold. I'm going to watch it. What's it called? My Octopus Teacher.
My Octopus Teacher, and on so many levels, as a father, as a human, it's part of nature. It's just it's what I consider to be a very, the eight master lessons of nature is a very important book, and this documentary is a very important documentary, and it was just really, well, it changed me. And so when I talk about that experience, I don't tell clients to go and watch it now. I talk about my experience. And the funny thing is, I got a text message last night from New Zealand. My octopus teacher, ... so good. I say I'd obviously gone and watched it, but it was that influencing instead of, telling Shane what he should do or what I think he needs to do. It's just creating that space, and he'll either walk into it or he won't.
And there's no attachment or expectation, which once again, because then it's like with the movie analogy, it's like, you have to go see it. Have you go and see it when you're seeing it. You're seeing it Tuesday, all right, great. And then like you message on Wednesday morning and go, how was it? And they're like, it was okay. I'm like, it was okay. Why was it okay? It was way better than okay. It was fucking awesome, because you were expecting them to have the same experience.
We went and saw something else, or we didn't get there. It's like, what? But you said you were going to go and see it. I wanted to talk to you.
We were meant to talk about it today.
So Shane can't fail in here, and none of my clients can fail at my program, because there's no expectation. It's just everyone does it at their own pace and creates a different outcome for themselves. So it removes any ability for them to feel a lot of pressure, or to feel overwhelmed, or to feel under these expectations, or I must, or I have to, or I ought to. I don't know, Shane, what's that experience been like for you?
Oh, it's fantastic, because I still know that there is, and we talk about this with relationships, but all relationships, there's still the needs of the relationship. And so that relationship for me, if I want to be in a position where I can help people like you, I have to do it A, B, C to get there. I can't just sit here and watch things happen. So there is that flow aspect to it, but there's also the reality that things need to be done.
But it's also an experiential element to it as well. Like, we're experiential learners, so we learn best by doing. And with Shane, I'm trying to help him take this explore and experiment approach. Instead of having these rigid expectations that you should do this, it's try this and see what happens, and it's cause and effect. And we're going to learn best through that way, I think. And it's going to be a deeper learning than just rote learning. This is the way I do it, this is how you have to do it. Shane's got a skill set of his own that he's going to bring to the company and to clients, and I really want him to influence the business through being himself. So I don't
of course, because then exactly, yeah, because then you'll add to the business. Yeah, if you just try and create a clone of yourself, it won't be beneficial for Shane or the business, because we have these innate skills, like innate strengths, and like me and Melissa, like we do the same kind of therapy, but it's very different because we just both have different natures, so we should be playing towards those strengths. And I think what you're saying about the learnings, it's like, and also what you're saying, Shane, with like having those feelings in your body the other week, it's like, we have to get uncomfortable, and this is getting out of your comfort zone again, but we have to get uncomfortable if we want to start to grow and learn these things, because we can't learn anything new without first being confused or not knowing. Like every place of knowing comes from not knowing, but we hate that feeling of not knowing. And that's why people get fear coming up, confusion, don't want to do this, just go back home, just go back to bed, all this kind of stuff, which is just resistance of going back to the known. But we're not going to be able to learn something deep without feeling those feelings first and acting in spite of them.
But I think Shane's also coming to an understanding with those three amigos, Shane, I must get what I want, I must be loved, I must be perfect. How... knowing that they exist now, how often do you experience them popping up?
Daily.
Like
when I feel like anxious or stressed or guilty or depressed, I just go, where's that coming from? And even if it's like 10 seconds that I go, oh yeah, and then laugh and move on, it's there. But I also see it in everyone else as well. So because I'm learning it all now, it's, as we've spoken about before, I can see it all everywhere around me. So yeah, I see it, but I think the most that came up is when you gave me a list of clients to call. And it's just Emmy Ryan. I was like a 3-year-old basically. I couldn't call his clients to just have a chat with him.
He went into freeze. There was no fight or flight. It was just pure freeze.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I came in one day. One week I called for my business. I called like 5 people. I was on the phone for like 10 hours that week, all up, just answering phone calls, emails. But then come in here and I'm like, I've got to call these people, and I just couldn't do it. And I was just like, and I just walked into a session with him, and I just went, what the fuck is wrong with me? I can't do it. So we just like worked through that. But it was, there was fears that I had to be perfect because it was Myndfit.
Right. Okay. That was my next question. Why was it different with that than with the ones you were calling? Okay.
So they're the barriers that I'm trying to break down now. Is Nick doesn't expect me to be perfect. He's, we're not both always going to get what we want. Not every client of Nick's is going to like me. So I've got to sort of get through that, because having 2 people in the business, some people aren't going to like me as much as they like Nick, but
and vice
that's
versa.
okay. Yeah,
vice
that's
versa.
Okay. So it's it's continually trying to break through that, because that is really uncomfortable. Even as I sit here now, I'm like a bit tense. So,
but it's another example as well of how powerful the mind is. And Shane was experiencing anxiety to a degree. I experienced anxiety, as we've spoken about, to a monumental degree, where it debilitated me to be able to leave my house. But you can hear how Shane's mind disabled his body to protect him. That anxiety wrapped his arms around him. It's all right, mate. No one's going to laugh at you. No one's going to go, what the fuck? Why are you ringing me? It's like, and we just spoke with my last client, and Shane came in for that session as well, about how the unknown is probably one of the most powerful sources of stimulus. It will trigger all sorts of different shit in our head, and we'll jump to conclusions. We'll worst case scenario, we'll crystal ball, or our imagination will explode with all these. I have to fill in the unknown. I can't stand not knowing. So when I hand him a list of clients and say, hey, can you just ring these people and introduce yourself? Because he can't see them, they're on the other side of the phone, or he has no experience with them. It just triggers this. He literally broke down.
And the fear was Nick was going to lose clients. That was the fear. I didn't want to upset Nick, like in reality. But he'd always said, I wouldn't give you things to do that I thought were going to do that anyway. So,
but you're also not that powerful where you can make me lose clients, and I say that with compassion, because we create, our egos create this thing where I am so powerful, I can ruin someone's life. Like you said that to me one day. You've got access to my bank accounts and all this stuff, and he goes, I could end you, and I went. I don't think you could, pal.
Oh, how funny!
It's funny because I live a very similar kind of way to Nick. I'm exactly the same. Like I see like, as much as we've had the conversation where I don't want to be a clone of Nick. There's so many elements that are very similar. Like
we don't lock our back door at our house.
Yes, we're very just open people like that. We have a lot of trust, I guess, in others, and I mean to the point where like he paid for my petrol one day because I've obviously been coming down here and working, and I said I knew you were going to do that, and the reason I knew is because I would have done the same thing. It was so there's a lot of similar traits there, but I think there's some like great unique things about us both in this space as well.
Oh, of course. That's why we connect, because there's so many similarities. There's like a similar vibration there. But then with that similarity, there's also the differences.
Yeah, you're creating your tribe, but you can't have a tribe of Ryans or a tribe of Nicks or a tribe of Shanes. You could have a tribe of Nick, Ryan and Shane, but we're all going to have a commonality. There's going to be a common ground.
It's like everyone just wants to be the blacksmith in the village. It's like you can't just have 50 blacksmiths and nothing else.
I love the expression. What's the insult? It was in a village full of village idiots. You're the village idiot in a village full of village idiots.
What?
It's an insult to say if you want to insult someone.
So it's a village full of village idiots, and out of that idiot village, you're the village idiot. Just off topic a bit, speaking about leaving your doors open, yeah, we got robbed the other night because we leave our... I leave the...
manifested it.
Did I?
In the last podcast, you said, what happens if someone breaks in and attacks my family? You know, it was...
Oh, yeah, I did too. I am a manifester. I'm a full manifester. So, yeah, someone broke in, but, like, we were really grateful because what happened... So someone literally came in overnight because we leave the front door open, it's not locked and everything, and just took money out of my wallet and Mel's purse. Because I got up in the morning and I go down about 6 a.m. and get, coffee from 7-Eleven, and I open my wallet to pay. I'm like, fuck's all my money? And then I'm like, I had to get money out and then pay for it. And on the way back, I'm like, did we get robbed? And I'm like, nah, we didn't get robbed. Because, like, literally downstairs, garage door open, both motorbikes, keys in the ignition of the motorbikes. Like, this is how much trust I have. And they didn't take the bikes. And then I got back and I told Mel, and she checked her purse, and she's like, oh, shit, all the money's gone from here as well. So they literally just came in, even left the wallets and purse, which is fantastic. Got all my cards still. And there was three laptops right next to the wallets. They didn't take any of the laptops. It was just the money. So... we were, a bit shocked, but, like, we were pretty grateful in the end. I'm like, man, I don't care about the money. Like, if the laptop went, that's my whole life on that bloody thing. Yeah. So, it was really interesting. But it was also, we feel a bit sad because it's just because people are desperate. Like, things are tough in Melbourne at the minute, but still get the money from the government and that kind of shit as much as we want to shit on them. Over here, people are fucking eating insects and shit for dinner because, like, they can't work because there's no tourists. So...
But that's a sign of how healthy you are, Haas, because that stimulus doesn't trigger a reaction in you. It's you're okay emotionally, so you can shift into a place of compassion, and when you get robbed, you don't go into that deep distortion and deep disturbance and fuck this and the world's crap, and it doesn't change or alter you or make you, really protective of everything. You just go into that compassion and go, wow, it's so sad that people are having to steal,
Yeah.
So
yeah, we were sad that steal, and we were grateful they didn't, it could have been a lot worse. So,
but it says a lot about you, though.
I've come a long way from stubbing my toe last week on the stairs.
You have. You've grown. Yeah. It's like you've done 7 years in 7 days. You've just changed so much. And
I was down because we have. Like, it's a pretty open space, but there's like a security guard 24/7 in the main entrance to where all these villas are. So that's why we feel a bit secure as well. But yeah, I was trying to explain to him what happened, and it was so funny because the English we're pretty remote in this area, and I've got my Google Translator out because I'm like, I'll show him my empty wallet. Like, someone come in, take money, and he's like, oh, money, ATM down a kilometre down here. I'm like, no. So I had Google Translator trying to show, but then he called the police, and the police were here looking at the CCTV footage, and they're like, you want to come to the station? And I'm like, nah, don't worry about it. I'm just like, well, I was just letting you know because I tell other people maybe in the other villas to lock up, So yeah.
Have you been locking your door since, or?
Like 2 nights, yeah. But even last night, I'm like, don't worry about it. And Mel's like, we'll lock it. And I'm like, they're not going to hit the same house twice in a week, surely. Like, we'd be like low. But yeah, we have been. Which, well, just do it, So it was an interesting experience, put it that way.
Well, when Emma comes over, because I leave my door open at night and everything, so Polly can wander in and out and, do what she needs to do. But when Em comes over, she just unconsciously shuts every door. And so I get up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, and I'm crashing into doors, and I can hear Polly going, how do I get out? And I said to Em, can you just leave the door open? She goes, yeah, but what if someone comes in? I'm like, so in bringing another person into my space, I've got to start considering their needs.
And it's something that, like, I don't want to get into bloody gender politics stuff here, but, like, it's something us guys don't understand because we haven't experienced it. But it's like, even during the day, walking through an alley or something, or walking through a park, and it's like we don't. There's no thought in my mind. It's like, oh, I hope I don't bump into anyone here. I could be physically threatened and that kind of thing. But for a woman, it's this constant thing. Like, it's a constant thing that I could be under some sort of threat here.
Are you saying men are better than women?
No, I'm saying it's an interesting...
You're saying men are stronger than women? You're so sexist.
No, don't be like that. I'm just saying, it's an interesting realization to have. It's like we just don't have that experience,
Totally.
because
But
for me it's like we walk down the street, and there's no thought like, oh, there could be a guy jumps out or that kind of jazz.
yeah, and that's unfortunate and sad. But it's in my instance, like ex-army, lots of military training. I can handle and protect myself. But then M comes in. She's 5'4" or something, and slide I'm 6'2", and she's had no training, and she's been a single mum, and like I wouldn't mess with her. To be honest, I would not poke that. No, sorry. Her spirit animal is a lion, so she would go to town.
Yeah.
But it's true. And I think we really need to step out of ourselves and consider the collective. What are the collective needs, not just what are my needs anymore? And I'm doing that with Shane. What are our collective needs? There's two of us in the business.
Yeah, I've noticed it with Tommy, like having like such a defenseless, young child and everything. You automatically start to look at threats and things that you definitely wouldn't have looked at previously in the environment. So you kind of interact with the environment differently.
Come on, he's Ryan Hassan's son. He should be able to get up and take names and numbers all day long.
He's getting close. I reckon. What is he? He's 2 nearly. I reckon 2.5. He should be right.
Have you got him a wrestling name yet?
No. Oh, Tommy Brave, Hassan. Yeah, I'll be able to come up with something good with that. But no, he's good. You should see him like lift. He's like a little muscle man. He's always trying to lift stuff up, like packages that we get and stuff. But he's hilarious. But no, you do interact with the world differently when these dynamics change.
Yeah, totally. What's Tommy's middle name?
Brave.
Tommy Brave.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
We just like that name. We were gonna have that as his first name. But then we were like, and then I was like, yeah, Ben, he might be a bit of a sensitive kid being my son, and I don't want to load that on him. He has to be brave and that kind of thing. So I'm like, let's just keep it as the middle name.
How considered? That's mindful parenting 101 right there.
Yeah. So yeah, let's look. Like Shane, it's important the three beliefs that you were bringing up, and the stuff that happened with the phone. Like it's such important stuff for us to go through and learn from, especially if you're on this path, and like it's like a transition. You've gone from these dark nights and then going through this work and now learning and still being a client, but also learning, and then also even starting to see clients and that kind of jazz. So it's a real transition point for you. And being a therapist, like having to work through and leave those three beliefs behind, that you have to be perfect, you need to be loved, and what's the other one, Nick?
Must get what I want.
Must get what I want. So yeah, that's like you got to imagine when we bring those three things as a therapist, it's just a nightmare. Yeah, nightmare. Because if there's a need to be perfect, we'll always feel like we'll fall short. And the issue there is, like, we will do our best. And our best will vary from time to time. It's kind of like the 4 agreements, the other episode, Nick. But it's like we're always going to do our best. If we could do better, we would. That's why even if you have a session and you're like, I did feel it didn't go that well, you couldn't do any better. So you can leave perfect behind. By holding on to that, you're always going to feel like you should have done more. Yeah, which means
that deficiency as well that we talk about. It's going to create that I am not enough. I'm deficient in some way.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you look at
Shane's not deficient in any way. Like Shane's progressed so far, but what Shane's doing is, and what I've done and what you've done is, when we develop ourselves, that has a ripple effect through all the hats that we wear. So Shane's becoming a better partner, he's becoming a better lived experience mental health practitioner, he's become a better teammate at cricket when we can go and play cricket in. So as Shane is evolving within himself, that has a ripple effect through all those components.
Yes. And I think if we talk about that, it was only probably a couple of months ago where someone that I knew was very suicidal, and I went into that. I need to fix because of those beliefs. And obviously, working in this field, you can't walk away from a session like basically worrying about that or thinking about that, because you can't put your happiness in that person's hand.
I haven't said this to you yet, but something I got taught very early on is you can't help someone if they're not there with you.
Yeah.
And that's what it all boiled down to with me, which was what freed me up to be there present for my next client. If you're seeing 5 clients a day, and the 5th client you're still worrying about the first person, they're still playing on your mind, then you're not actually present for that 5th client. So as soon as someone leaves, you've got to let them go, let all their stuff go with them. You've got to trust that they're going to implement whatever it is that you've discussed.
Or not. It's like it's kind of like trusting their journey. It's like,
totally.
and it's like and they're not having an attachment to that. And this is where, like, us lived experience practitioners, this is where that kind of the most difficult, I suppose, work is. It's because we're lived experience that we are able to connect so well with people because they've gone through a similar thing that we did. But then it's also that double-edged sword where it's like that's the work of being able to let go of carrying that stuff. So that this is the kind of the difference as well between empathy and compassion. I think if you get too empathetic, you kind of jump down in the pit with someone. And you're like,
I think it's the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Yeah, no, I think
empathy is I can feel what you feel, but I'm not going to take you out of it. I'm just going to sit there with you, and it's okay that you're feeling whatever you're feeling. Where sympathy is, you're going to go into a very different space.
Okay, well, I'll use sympathy and compassion. So sympathy is jumping down into the pit with someone and saying, well, you're a bit more comfortable because I'm in the pit with you, but now we're both in the pit. Whereas compassion is standing up above the pit and reaching your hand down and saying, you can reach out and grab my hand if you want to, and if not, that's fine, but I'm not coming down there. Well, but I still acknowledge, I still empathise now that you're down there.
But as practitioners, we need to validate that our clients are down in the hole, and we know that hole very well. But we're just going to pass them the tools, and they're going to climb their own way out. We're not going to get down we can't help someone if we're down in the gutter with them. And healers are renowned for not charging enough. Like I'll see you. Just pay me $30. It's like, fuck off, you're going to eat. But it was and this may sound weird, Shane, but it was beautiful watching Shane go through this discomfort in terms of all of a sudden his eyes were open and he saw how much suffering he was creating with himself, and he saw all this suffering in the world. It was like the blindfold got taken off and he was blinded by this suffering, and that the natural healer in him started screaming. She's like, I can't deal with all this suffering. And he's like, I have to fix it all. How are we going to do it, Nick? How are we going to heal the world? How are we going to create utopia? And I had to sit back and wait for him to come crashing back to earth.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
No, it was I'm glad I had the crash and the realization, because it led me to a point where I've had multiple phone calls or people reach out to me since, and I've sort of given them some tools or some guidance or just had a chat with them and just left it. And if they come back to me, they come back to me. And I even said to Alicia, she sent me, my fiance, a message the other week. She'll love listening to this and getting a shout out. But she sent me a message of something, and I just said, there's a reason why I don't go on social media. It's because I actually don't want to think about that kind of stuff. Like, I just leave that stuff now. It's whatever's in my life and is in my life for a reason. And if it's about my friends and family, I'll find out through them. So it was a really good crash because I just realised that a lot of that stuff just doesn't matter. The right things will just pop up.
But what happened was it wasn't you didn't crash as a person. Your illusion was shattered, and our beliefs create our perception, and our perception creates our reality. So you had this irrational belief that the world should be perfect, and you came into that realization that it's not, that it's so unrealistic, that illusion thankfully shattered. Now you can actually work in the reality of what is instead of the reality of what you would like to happen.
And social media is a tough one as well, because if you want to help people, like, social media is not the place to go, because you spoke about we need to validate someone's experience. Social media tends to be, not always, but like a lot of the time when people are struggling and want to vent what they're feeling, all they're doing is you get a bunch of people together who validate each other's experience, but none will actually want to do any work and get any help. They'll just want to sort of sit in their pity party. Like we've got some group Mel made. It's like support for family of ice addicts or that kind of jazz, and the group fucking goes off. Like it has thousands of members. Like posts every day. Like Mel had to get someone to be an admin and stuff for it, who's in the group and everything. But I told Mel like 2 years ago or something. I'm like, just ban me from the group. Like I don't want to see it anymore. I can't deal, because you'll have a thread of someone. Oh, my daughter's going through this and been through this, and like 50 comments of people. And then I'll put a comment in there saying, have you thought about this or try this? Like every other comment's got like 20 likes and people are replying and everything. And it's just crickets when you put an actual solution in there. And I'm like, okay, that's it. Get me out of this group. I can't handle people just wanting to whinge to it. It's good they feel better because there's other people going through something similar. But 98% just don't want an actual solution. They just want to bitch and moan about it.
But so what in the in Ryan's terms, every listener's bitching and moaning. Shane, what are these people doing?
What are they doing?
Yeah, when they're just posting in the forums and bitching and moaning, what are they doing?
Well, they're they're trying to get help, but I don't know where you want me to go with this.
Yeah, I put him on the spot intentionally. So they're in suffering.
Suffering for what?
They're in suffering, and so they're just venting their suffering. So it feels better because they've gotten that toxicity out of their system, and by nature we don't like having toxicity in our system. So
and with this particular topic of drugs, these people oftentimes have no one else to speak to. Like they won't tell their sister or their friends because they're quite shameful that their son or daughter's a drug addict. So oftentimes this is their number one venting outlet.
It's their outlet. But it's like sucking venom out of a snakebite wound. It's making us feel better temporarily, where we need to learn not to walk where snakes are or to wear gumboots or something. So what I'm teaching Shane, hopefully, is with my clients, they'll come in and there's a certain level of venting that we all need to do and need to validate what they're going through. But there comes a point where that venting turns into ruminating and they get stuck in that narrative. And if there's so many therapists out there that will just enable them to do that, and they'll agree with them, and some therapists become sympathetic and you go, oh yeah, what a bastard, I can't believe that happened either, or they'll validate that pity party and enable them to stay there. We very respectfully and compassionately acknowledge what they're doing, we validate, yeah, that's problematic, but it's not the problem, so let's park that to the side, and the root cause of what's causing that suffering that you need to then vent is X, Y, and Z. So let's deal with that. So yeah, we don't really have a lot of time for the pity parties and all that sort of stuff.
That's what I said. Sit down with a client that I'm working with, and she comes in and she'll tell me about what's going on, and then I'm like, all right, let's park it, because what you're doing now is you're ruminating, and we can spend this hour with you ruminating, but then you're just going to ruminate for the next 23 hours at home by yourself. You want to come in here for a different experience, don't you? And like, I'm pretty honest about that, because most people will acknowledge they sit at home and ruminate their problems. So why would you want to come in and pay someone to just ruminate more?
That was a really beautiful line, actually. Yeah, you're coming in here for a different experience. I think that's really beautiful, really powerful.
And the way we translate that into effective practice is, I tell clients, we care about you. We love you, in fact, enough that we're going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. What you want to hear is, yeah, she's a bitch, or he's a bastard, or that's terrible. But what you need to hear is, well, actually, you're responsible for your happiness, not them. So let's figure out how to create that change and that shift. Because as Shane succinctly pointed out, they're paying us to get an outcome. And that outcome is not just to stay in that narrative. No,
it's to challenge the narrative.
Yeah.
I had I don't know if I talked about this last week. I don't think so. But I had a client the other week, and so what's happening for them is they've got all these hormone issues, right? And basically, we were going back and working on our memory from their birth, and they had this forceps birth. And anyway, I said, like, oh, so what is this young you? What are they going through? They're like, oh, well, I had a forceps birth and my pituitary gland is fucked because of it. And they were like, it just was really like solid. Their whole tonality changed. I'm like, your pituitary gland's fucked. And I found out, and then I said to him, I said, oh, so you've had since then, fMRI scans, you've had different tests done to prove that your pituitary gland is fucked or just not functioning properly. They're like, no, and kind of started laughing. And I'm like, well, what's really going on here? So what's happening is, yes, there's a hormone problem. That's a symptom that's showing up. Then they went and saw, and because you're searching for answers. It's like anything. We've got an issue. We're like, what's the answer? What's the answer? And we go searching. They went and saw a cranial therapist, cranial sacral, I think it's called. Anyway, someone who works with the head, a year before or something. And as they were working with the head, they just asked about birth. And she said she had a forceps birth, and then they just said, "Oh, that's probably why you got the issues because it can squash the pituitary gland." So then she's got a story and went, "Oh, that's the answer to my problems," and it has this whole story that's why my pituitary is fucked. And so now it's just this narrative: it's fucked. My pituitary gland's fucked. I'm like, do you think your pituitary gland is going to work as it should if every day you're telling yourself my pituitary gland is fucked? And she's like, no. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So it's like we were talking about the white coat syndrome, Nick, like a few episodes back, and how effective that can be with a placebo, or in this case, it's called a nocebo effect. So a placebo effect is when you're getting benefit from something that's like you get a medication that's a sugar pill and you get a benefit from it. But the nocebo effect is you're getting a negative outcome based on, and it's just your stories. So it's like a person of authority has told me something that's validated my experience, and now I'm getting negative outcomes. And we spoke about, people in villages years ago who would get a spell put on them by the village soothsayer or druid or something, and they would literally die. They would die from a curse because they believed it so much. And so once again, it's like you can't come in and just validate and go, oh yeah, no, it must be fucked then if that's what happened and blah, blah, blah. It's like you need to challenge these narratives, and that's, well, like you said, that's what we're getting paid for.
We become what we tell ourselves. If you're running a script, an internal subconscious script that I can't sleep at night, and you want to sleep at night, the math's not adding up. You've got to align what you believe with what it is that you actually like to be doing. If there's any misalignment, then it's just not going to work. So
yeah. And then we love being right about the story. So then we go to bed that night and we're rolling around for like an hour and I'm like, see, I knew I couldn't get to sleep tonight. It's like, yes, I proved myself right. There's a part of you that loves being right about shit that is not good for you.
I think that's one of the biggest changes I've had this year is, like, I was running that narrative that I was the depressed kid for 10 years because that was what I thought was beneficial for me, obviously for my business and all that. But I got so stuck in that narrative that I am depression, I am anxiety, I am suicidal. And I was just like, I want to write a book probably just for myself to start with, but it's stuck in my own depression because that's how I defined myself. It was like, who are you? Depression.
Yes, so you identify with that label and you carry that label, and that's who I am. And I think we spoke about this early on, Has, my curiosity with AA and with therapy groups, depression group, an anxiety group, an anger group. It's hi, I'm Nick and I'm alcoholic. If like you keep running that script but you don't want to be an alcoholic, I don't see how effective that's going to be.
Yeah, and you see it a lot. Like it's similar to what you went through, Shane. Like you become then an advocate for these things, right? And then you get positive feedback for the fact that you're so open about your depression. So then all of a sudden the identity of depression gets stronger because someone will say, you shared your story so vulnerable, I've been through something similar, thank you so much. So it's like, oh, I am depressed, Shane. Okay, depression is me. It's because I'm getting positive feedback as well as my diagnosis. So that identity gets stronger and stronger because then it's like, oh, the only way I'm going to be an advocate or be able to help people is to still be depressed, then you're not going to be able to let it go.
That's one of the things that I want to really change is the perception of me, and people can have their own perception. That's up to them. But I've put out this perception that I am depression for so long, and I know people see me as this really serious person, but people that know me, like I walked into the office this morning and I was singing, and I'm not a very good singer, but that's me.
I can guarantee. Okay. I can back it up.
Confirmed.
I can validate that. Yeah.
What was he singing? What were you going for?
It was indescribable.
It was Brian Adams.
Brian Adams wouldn't have even recognised it.
Indescribable.
So what? And I guess we spoke about this off air, but recently was accepted onto Adventure All Stars TV, which I'll be raising money for Mindful Oz. And I know you had Matt Runnels on the other week on the podcast, so I'll be raising money for what he's doing. And one of the reasons I applied for it is I want people to see me, and I want to just experience that again, because I am that funny. Alicia would know. Alicia, as much as she wouldn't want to say it. I can be quite humorous. And I remember when I was 16, 17 at Hungry Jack's, I used to be making burgers, and when we weren't busy, I'd jump around and I'd sing and I'd dance, and I lost that. I completely lost all that part of me, and I'm slowly gravitating towards just being me again, and being really content with who I am each day in, day out. And that's the definition of happiness, and I am that now, and I really want to showcase that to people, and also showcase that to people who might be going through depression and anxiety, that you still can be that person. You don't need to be stuck in it. I'm so
glad that Shane isn't following in my footsteps. And I went through something similar. I was the class clown. I was, happy-go-lucky and whatever. And then when I went through my metanoia process, I came out, and the change was that contrast in that friends from back then and who I still have now refer to the old Nick and the new Nick. Like, that's how definite it was. And I lost the same thing. I lost that vibrancy. I lost the bubble because I started getting addicted to getting better. I got addicted to self-development, self-improvement and evolving and all that stuff. So I actually went from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. And because I wasn't content, I was constantly chasing. I'm not enough. I'm deficient. I have to heal. I got to keep healing. I got to get better and better and better and better. And that took away that capacity for me to be lighthearted, and I sing equally as bad. So that's another thing we have in common. What I lack in what I lack in talent, I make up for with enthusiasm. So it's but now I found my way back, and I love that nature coming out of me again, because it's just the heaviness isn't there anymore. It's back to being more lighthearted and laughing. I think part of Shane's evolution is doing a mental rep, is being aware and then laughing at how irrational it's been. I wonder if that has helped you a bit, Shane, and learning to laugh at yourself again.
Yes, I remember I did a meditation last week, and I reckon I spent 20 minutes basically laughing at myself in a very non-judgmental way, because I could hear all the disturbances and hear it all like come, and I was just like laughing, and I was laughing because I was like, I was living in that, and I was kept validating that, whereas now I'm seeing it from a completely different perspective. And obviously I'm not a robot, and I'm still human, and over the last 3 months I've lost my cool or whatever, and the next day I go, oh my God, I do laugh at myself, and I'm like, what happened? Like, you just did that, and I'll laugh at myself, and it doesn't mean I'm never going to do those things again, but that's been so important, and finding that balance between learning, so listening to podcasts which help educationally and working, but then I also listen to a couple of other podcasts which have got a lot of comedy in it, but also have a little serious element to it. And then watching comedy movies that are so unrealistic, and watching even TV shows, which I won't name on here because I won't embarrass myself too much, but watching a certain TV show and laughing at the irrational and immature behaviours we show as humans. It's The Bachelor, by the way.
I had a day the other day on Monday, I think, Hassan. I had 5 clients or 6 clients. 3 of them were back to back to back, and one of them was a 90-minute session. So it was 3.5 hours of constant active listening. And I'd had breakfast, but I didn't get lunch. And there's been a lot going on, and so by the end of the day, we were launching the online membership the next day. So I finished with my client, and then I'm like, right, is this going to happen? And I saw Shane looking at me in the office, and he's just looking at me going, who the fuck's this person? I've never seen this guy. It's like, and he's like, okay. And he went home, and what'd you say to Alicia?
Nick's human. He had another human moment.
And it happens to all of us. It really does, and that's what I love. We're talking here, on the whiteboard there. We've got necessary and unnecessary suffering, and to the first noble truth in Buddhism: to live is to suffer. We are going to experience anger, depression, guilt, anxiety, but unnecessary suffering comes from when we get stuck in employing more cognitive distortions, thinking it shouldn't happen, or taking it personally, or worst case scenario, or whatever the case may be. So in Myndfit, we're just trying to help. We're trying to give people a fighting chance, essentially, to look after their own happiness and health by learning to laugh at themselves and how irrational we're being, and not get stuck, just keep moving forward.
Yeah. I think what you guys are talking about as well is like, we go through your word, Nick, the metanoia, which is the full breaking down and rebuilding, and we think that we break down and we realise I can't keep living these stories and these different parts of me, but then we're like, I'm going to be a completely different person. So then we sort of disregard everything. So we look back at us as being, fun-loving, bit of a dickhead sometimes, dick jokes with our mates and that kind of thing. That has to go, as well as all my old deficiency stories. And then that's like what happened with you, Nick. It's get very serious, and now I'm studying and learning, Nick, and blah, blah, blah. But it's like we can then look back and go...
I thought it had to be really mature. And I couldn't have any immaturity in me. But I realised that it's important to have that childlike nature,
of course,
remaining within you.
It's like the rascal or the Joker avatar. It's like we need that. It's part of us.
You need that sense of wonderment and that sense of and that sense of, what we don't need is part of that child nature is the irrationality, is the I must get what I want, I must be loved, I must be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's a very immature belief system. So we want to retain that sense of child, but without, as an adult, we don't want to have the irrational element to it.
Exactly. So we can look back and Shane will go, well, that was bad singing Shane and fun Shane and everything. I like that Shane. He's okay to bring. The deficiency stories, the need to be loved, the depression and that. I don't need to bring that forward, but this stuff's all okay still.
I love making people laugh. Shane loves making people laugh. I was dancing at home the other night in front of Emma, and she's just looking at me pissing herself off. She said I dance like what she referred to it as an injured huntsman spider. Not just one that you've sprayed and the poison's kicking in, but it hasn't died yet. Only half its legs are moving, and it's kind of going around in a circle. It's not just a huntsman spider. It's an injured huntsman spider.
That's such a good description.
And I loved it, and I embraced it, and I ran with it, and I tried to really exacerbate that, and we both had a wonderful night. But that light-heartedness and that lightness really made a wonderful night. So.
Oh, it's gold. That's gold. And dancing like an injured huntsman.
I definitely know, like Alicia knows, when I'm singing, she knows how content I am and how, I guess, comfortable I am with who I am. It's because I know that I'm not a great singer. I know I'm not perfect, and but that's me just expressing myself. And I feel sorry for anyone that was driving along the freeway and saw me singing in my car this morning, because I was dancing to a bit of R&B in my car this morning, and I'm surprised. I'm glad a policeman didn't see me, because they would have pulled me over.
But you can hear the freedom. You can hear, and what's great about retaining that sense of child is the innocence and the freedom. There's no judgment. There's no self-criticism or putting down or labelling. that freedom is there, and that freedom comes from not having those really irrational attachments. So our mind is free, and we can just dance like nobody's watching.
Yeah, there's a story about
we don't care.
We don't care. We're comfortable in our own skin. There's a story about a shaman, and he would see the people would come to him from all over with, stress, mental issues, and that kind of thing. And he would just always ask them the same thing. He'd ask, when did you last sing? When did you last dance? When did you last play? And I can't remember the fourth one, but it was basically if you've done all of those recently, you're going to be in a very healthy place. But you'd find that people who were struggling had not been doing those things. They're like, oh, well, I haven't danced for years, It's like, that's a problem.
Only weirdos dance. No, don't want to do that.
So that's the that shaking and dancing meditation that I was doing for a while. That was really interesting as well, because that was just full dancing, and you just watch how some movements you feel real, like, even though I'm by myself in a locked room, I feel this embarrassment coming up, and you do moving in some kind of way, and there's like this, this kind of feeling, a guy shouldn't be moving that way, or blah, 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 and it's like, oh, what's that? That's interesting. I'm in a room by myself in the dark. Why is there a part of me judging?
So imagine parallel universes. In one universe, there's a person that's not a great dancer, dancing like an injured huntsman, but they don't care, and that they're just dancing with that freedom, yeah. And then in the other universe, exactly the same person, but all of a sudden they have this anxiety and this nervousness about them. You're looking at the same person essentially, but the way they treat themselves is going to give other people permission to treat them the same way. So if you treat yourself without this judgment, you can dance like an injured huntsman and no one else is going to care. You're actually going to add value to that experience, because it's going to give them permission to be flawed as well. It's going to give them permission to be imperfect. So they'll jump up and start dancing badly as well. And all of a sudden there's 6, 7, 8 people all doing these stupid dances.
You'll see it at a wedding or something, and you'll see the person giving it their all, and you're like, fuck yeah. And
and you support him. You're like, yes, go hard. But if you do it and someone says, oh, why are you dancing like that, and tries putting you down, and you take it personally, then it's going to create a very different energy, very different ripple effect.
Yeah. So dance like no one's watching.
We do that with the juggling in MEDEX class as well. It's like people come in thinking they should be able to juggle like professional jugglers, but it brings very quickly to their awareness the fact that you're not that good, and you've got to deal with that.
That's that confusion before learning again, and that uncomfortable feeling of, oh, I'm not really good at this, I want to stop.
But when you bring it to the surface, then you can start dealing with it instead of just hiding away from it.
Yeah, I love it. All right, should we wrap it up there, boys?
Yeah, man, I'm hungry.
Well, I'm pretty hungry too, actually. Shane, are you hungry?
Right. Yeah, I'm hungry.
What are you going for? What are you going for down there?
Don't know.
Actually, on that, I actually wrote something today, because I've heard a lot of people say lately, I don't want to meditate because I'm stressed. I'm too stressed. And I thought, so if you're hungry, do you just not eat? Like, that's what basically, or if you're tired, you just don't sleep. Like, when you're stressed, you want to meditate. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
I'm not going to go to sleep tonight because I'm too tired.
Yeah. It's basically what people are saying.
It is.
But we'd like people to go a step further and meditate to not feel so stressed instead of using meditation to de-stress.
Yeah.
But, one step at a time. And it was Shano's birthday this week on Tuesday. So
happy birthday, Shano. How old, mate?
Thanks.
25?
32,
okay.
32.
Emotionally, how old?
Some days 4, some days 48.
I was about to say, I'm that in one day. Something will happen and I'll start going off, and then Melissa will just say to me, she'll go, how old are you right now? Which Ryan's this? And I'm like, about 13. She's like, yeah, I'm feeling that as well.
Own it, man.
Own it. Yeah, I'm 13. What of it? Whatever.
Yeah. It's my life, man.
I can do what I want. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, listening. Shano, thanks for coming back on again. Really important to chat in this time of transition for you and talk to people about change. And I'm super excited over here to see what's next for you, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me again.
Nico,
Thanks
pleasure as always,
thanks
mate.
Yeah, you too, mate. Thanks for putting Shane on his path, and he wouldn't be here without firstly working with you. So
It's a beautiful
gratitude
path,
to
mate.
you.
It's a beautiful path.
Yes.
I'm just enjoying watching. I was enjoying watching last year. I'm enjoying watching this year.
Didn't you go for jail for that as well?
Well, for what?
Watching?
I'll be watching you.
Oh, God. All right.
No, I didn't actually. I didn't. I was a drug trafficker. It's much better.
So much better. So much better. That sounded like a clip out of Brooklyn Nine-Nine then.
Is it? I haven't watched that one. That's a silly show, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
Watch it.
all right. Okay. I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm down.
So
All right, Piers.
my octopus teacher and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And the 8 Master Lessons of Nature. That's the book.
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
All right. I've got a few Audible credits banked up, so I'm on board.
Oh, Emma's been listening to the back pain book as well, and she's
Dr. Sano.
Yeah, and she's getting a lot out of it.
It's
So,
super interesting stuff. Yeah, really. I intuitively kind of had a feel that would resonate for me. I intuitively that had been my experience, and then having read that book. So yeah, I encourage everyone with back pain, read with an open mind. Okay, Dr. Sano, he's passed away now, but he worked with many people with back pain, and it was his opinion that he said all. But I would say that maybe a fair percentage of back pain was due to what he called TMS, which is tension myostatus syndrome, which is basically pent-up rage and anger. So a lot of emotional stuff being held around the spine. So it wasn't so much structural; it was just around, and that was the thing with discs. So you can go and get an MRI, and like so many people, they'll say, "Yeah, you got bulging discs." Like, I got 2 bulging discs, but what they did, someone started looking at MRIs of people who'd been in for different issues. So people with maybe they get MRIs for gut issues or to check, I don't know what else you check. But anyway, they took all their files and found out that a whole heap, like over half of the people you could say had a bulging disc, but they weren't coming in for back pain. So they got in touch with those people and just said, do you experience any back pain? Like, no. So these people had bulging discs but never reported any back pain. So the whole bulging disc thing is yes, I mean, it can be an issue, but it's not, I think, the cause of a lot of back pain.
it's not one size fits all, is it?
Yeah.
So, and Emma's tried everything, and it really resonated because of her, I won't go into it, but stuff in the past. She just went bang. Yep, I reckon that's what I've been holding on to and I've been penting up. So it's really opened her eyes to some stuff. So
yeah, just tell her to trip up some stairs every now and then, spill some coffee, and let that suppressed rage come to the surface.
And she can let it out as a form of laughter while she's watching the Injured Huntsman dance.
She can take it out on you.
Yeah. Oh no, she would clean me up in a heartbeat.
All right, everyone. It was good chatting. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.